our universe, it was not intended to be in this way it is, and will never proceed. So you can realize that there is a necessary being who possesses an attribute of will. And when you give an attribute of will to a being that demonstrate awareness, self-awareness, choice and self-awareness, that being will be someone who is conscious, someone who will be living. So many attributes you will come to the conclusion about our Creator. There cannot be more than one of such a Creator, such a being. It is not reasonable to even conclude the existence and possibility of more than one absolutes. Someone who is absolute, all-powerful, self-sufficient. It simply doesn't make sense. Just to give you an example of an absolute will. We are in a car, you are on the driving wheel, and the same car has another driving wheel, all the steering and all the controls. Now you want to take the car to north. I want to take the car to south. Now I'm not going to listen to you because I'm independent. I have my own choice. I have my own will. Where's the car going to go?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So even using these examples like this, we can understand that there cannot be two absolutes because there will be conflict of will. And conflict of will mean the universe will be in a disaster. The fact that the universe is in this harmony, in this organization that we see, there are universal constants. So accurate to certain 22 or so even more decimal places. That's how precise the universe is constructed, demonstrating the organizational will of one being. Okay, so we cannot have more than one. If we have one being only, which makes sense, that anything that comes from this one being in terms of religion, which is meant to be the guidance for people, how you construct your life, how you live a life, the code of conduct, that will be consistent throughout. So there should not be a religion which says, you do this and you do that, you despise the old people and the disabled and so on, and you kill them and get rid of them because they are the burden to society. Another community says in another religion, you look after them, you care for them. You cannot have that if it's from the same one being. These kind of things will not be in existence. So the fact that we have one Creator means there will be one way of life instructed to us to live our life. That is what Islam teaches. Okay? So why do we have so many religions conflicting and saying different things? Some of them even having this belief like, wipe them out from this planet Earth because they are this and what, right?
Yeah, this is the issues.
We say Islamically, I understand, we say Islamically, our Creator revealed the guidance, the same consistent guidance, to be applied by the people through prophets and messengers. Yeah. But what happened is, as time went, people corrupted these messages.
Yes.
They failed to keep it pristine, clear, and preserve it. They failed to preserve it. And because of this, the message got corrupted, diluted, embellished, and so on and so forth. And that's why you have all of these problems that we see, because it is not the true message from God. So we say God, our Creator, when we say God, is a being who is worthy of worship. That's simply what God means, a being that deserves our worship, our gratitude. I mean, if, for example, you did something to someone, it is not because you did it because of something. That person, knowing that you've done that out of your kindness, your compassion, they will thank you for it. That thankfulness, that gratitude they're offering you is what they need to do, not what you want from them. Okay? So that's their gratitude. We have to worship God because we need to worship God, not because He needs our worship.
I don't think we was created to worship.
Okay. Our Creator tells us that we were created for our purpose, to acknowledge Him and to be grateful to Him. And that essence of gratitude.
But that's the bit I don't.
Fine, we can discuss that. I know, I understand.
That we was created the same way every other animal was created. Mm-hmm. We was created to live. Okay. We have moral compasses within us, whether the Creator gave that to us, whether an energy, whatever higher being is. We was created to be good and bad and live our lives. Okay. Not to live by rules and regulations.
What if you follow what is good and avoid what is bad and you live your life? Are you following something?
Maybe I am.
Because when you're following something good, you are following. So you have a code of conduct, code of life.
Yeah, but I don't agree with the rules and regulations.
But do you agree that we need to live our life to the best for everyone, for me and for everyone else?
Yeah.
That means not harming others, not oppressing others, not being unjust to others.
Yes.
Now, suppose our Creator told us this is how we should live your life. Would you have a problem with that?
No, so I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's why when we say to live our life in a particular way of living, that is God's way for us to live, our Creator. So you're not against that, you're against a form of way of life which goes against perhaps what you consider to be good, what you consider to be right, what you consider to be correct. That is what we need to differentiate. So in essence, we don't disagree. We are disagreeing with that message out there which creates division, which creates enmity, hatred, bigotry, which creates between people this idea of tension and saying you are less than the other, they are better than you, and so on. Islam says this is not the message of God. That is not the message of God. The message of God exactly on the contrary, that God created you to live on this earth in peace and tranquility and to be established in justice on this earth. He says He created the balance, and He says do not transgress this balance.
Would it be a wonderful world if we could all do that?
Right. So as I can see, you agree in principle the essence of the teaching of Islam is to identify where is that message, because you see this message, remnants of it, part of it, here and there in different religions. We will say all of these belief concepts that we see around, we need to scrutinize and to find out which one is the clarity of message from our Creator, which you would be happy to follow. That is the role of the mind here, that we need to filter out the things, the religions, the ideologies, the belief system, and find out the one which is the one that I will, with my heart and mind, accept because I know it's the truth. So we need to have, firstly, number one, which you have already, curiosity to know, to find out, love for the truth. Even if it was found in particular, say in Islam, for example, you would not make it into an obstacle. You will say, that doesn't bother me, just because the message came in Arabic, because it's the truth. Yeah. So our love for the truth should be prime here, and we need to have some methods to employ so that we don't fall into the error of feeling to reaching to the conclusion by our gut feeling or emotions. We need to remove our biases as much as we can. Everyone is biased. I am biased, you are biased. We might not even express that, but we are biased. It's very difficult to remove those biases. Yeah. In science, we try to eliminate bias as much as possible. Okay? We try to be impartial as much as possible. So we should have a methodology in which we will remove our biases and say, okay, I may be vegetarian, but that doesn't stop me from accepting if a religion, God says, I have made you food from...
Sorry, can you mind to come inside, please, here? Because they're blocking the way. Come, it's okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
That's fine. Like, I may be vegetarian, but if God created, other forms of creation which you live in, like not plants only, and He says you can eat of them, which are pure and good for you, that shouldn't stop me from accepting this message because I'm a vegetarian, because that will be my bias coming into play. Likewise, if I find that my particular community is downgraded, that's not what it's called, is taken into account because what my community has done, that shouldn't stop me from saying, but the truth is truth. Yeah. Because whatever my community has done, God is showing His judgment on this community because what they have done wrong. Yeah. So me belonging in a particular community, say for example, I was a Jew, okay, and I was supposed to be the chosen one, and now if God says no, because of your transgression, the message has now gone to somewhere else because you did not fulfill the duties and responsibilities. Now God has given the burden of responsibility to another community who will dispose of that responsibility for the whole. That shouldn't stop you from accepting the truth because it's now gone to somewhere else. Yeah. So we want to eliminate all these biases, and if we do likewise, you will see the only truth is when you filter out all of them, and that will be Islam remaining on the table. Polytheism, you can discount it because polytheistic belief system cannot be from our one and only true Creator, because there is only one Creator. You can say this is a message that has been corrupted. So unless we can go deep down and filter it and uncover and rediscover what the truth is, you can't really follow it because you don't know what is true and what is falsehood. So when we examine all of these things, we have to really understand now how are we going to verify which one indeed is the true messages of God. Okay? So, criteria again. What are we going to use? We can use falsification tests, can we not? If we apply that test and it fails, it cannot be from God. Yeah? In science, someone says, this is the experiment I did, and this is how you can prove me false, by not able to replicate it. I'm giving you all these methods. If you're not able to demonstrate that the results you get with the same methodology, then there's something wrong with my method, and so on. Or, my conclusion is not valid. Because if my method is correct and you follow it, you should be able to replicate my result. Because I'm using, for example, if I put 2 spoons of sugar, the taste of that sweetness of it should be the same every time you put 2 sugars, right? But if it doesn't, there's something wrong. Maybe my spoon is bigger, like that big, and of course it's going to be extra sweet. So when we are going to examine the religion, we have to use this correct methodology and ask for falsification tests. Now, Islam provides some falsification tests I can share with you and say it makes sense or not. It says, if this book was from any other than God, then you will find within this book, Quran, many discrepancies and inconsistencies and contradictions. Now, I think that makes sense, because if a book came from the All-Wise, the creator of the heavens and the earth must know what he's created. He's not going to make a mistake of something about the reality and say, and gets it wrong. He's not going to make a mistake and gets history wrong, what happened to history in the past, because he's supposed to be the ever-living, all-knowledgeable creator, knowing every single thing that happens. So if we find a book that talks about things and contradicts and brings errors within it, then you can say it's got corrupted or it's not from God. Okay? And you can examine these books likewise. You can examine the Bible, you can examine the Bhagavad Gita, you can examine the books of the Buddhist scriptures, whatever that you fancy. And when you examine it, you can come to certain steps of realization of how true this is or not. So I'm going to give you some examples of a book that I'm not going to even mention the name of, first of all, right? Then you can appreciate how we can filter these things. If a book describes about our Creator, must describe God in perfection.
Yeah.
Suppose this book says God was angry with people. He destroyed humankind once, and then he made a covenant with them. Say, you know what, next time I'm about to destroy mankind, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a covenant. I am going to put a rainbow in the clouds, and when I'm about to destroy mankind again, and I look at the clouds and see the rainbow, I will remember my covenant. So I won't destroy. Does that sound like a God who knows everything? He needs reminding by a rainbow.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And you know where this is coming from. You probably have read it yourself.
A few times.
Yes. So this is what we're saying is, descriptions like this, when we read it in the book, you can automatically say that, that doesn't resonate in my heart and my mind. It doesn't describe God in his perfection, because God is not like that. Someone who forgets, someone who's reminded by a rainbow. Look at the Quran, for example. I would urge you to investigate with the same mental, or mindset rather, and see how the Quran describes God and how it describes God in his perfection or not. That's one thing. And examine the Quran and see whether the Quran gets mistakes and errors, contradictions and discrepancies and inconsistencies. Because if the Quran withstands that test, then we should be asking ourselves, how is it that the Quran, given over a period of 23 years, spanning a period of 23 years, and talking about all these things about astrophysics and biology, about economics, sociology, anthropology, about predictions of the future, talking about the past nations and communities, and yet it doesn't somehow get any of these problems or mistakes and errors or discrepancy, then you have to think really seriously and say, is it possible that this is coming from the knowledge of God? That's what the Quran says. This has been revealed with the knowledge of God, as a revelation from the Almighty, All-Wise, okay, for the guidance of us. The Quran also gives another falsification test. It says, if you think it's not from God, produce something like it. A whole book, 10 chapters like it, or a single chapter like it. A single chapter is like about 3 verses. Okay? It was a challenge given to the people who were the masters of Arabic language at that time, and it came to person who wasn't even lettered. He was unlettered. He was known to be an unlettered person. So someone who came with a book in this linguistic excellence, because this is how even the critics of Islam will say this is a book of eloquence, how is it possible that they cannot even imitate something like it? Shakespeare can be imitated. So can be other poets and so on. Why is it impossible for the Quran to be imitated? This is something that for the last 1400 years Muslims have been asking this question to the non-Muslim critics who are knowledgeable, who are in the academia, who are professors in the universities. Okay, tell us, why are you unable to match the Quran? Sometimes people say, oh, we are, coming up with excuses and there. And some people say, here you go, we've matched it, not realizing what the Quran is to be matched on. The Quran says bring something like it, not unlike it, like it. So you have to bring in the construction the Quran is in. This is the objective challenge, not a challenge of beauty and eloquence, as popularly understood. Because eloquence is subjective, isn't it?
Exactly.
Beauty is subjective. So the Quran is not talking about this. Quran is talking about, can you bring a better guidance than God? Can you bring the Quran in the way it is delivered and is constructed, in objective way? So one can, in fact, academic studies have done and demonstrated this is the stylistics of the Quran. Because if you're a student of language, you will understand when we talk about stylistics, how a particular genre the Quran is, whether it is in this form, like in poetry, in Arabic poetry, they have several types. They call it the seas, the bihar, 16 types of poetry. Set forms. So like al-khafif, al-madid, al-tawil, rajaz, and so on. So these are rhymes and meters, fixed. Just like, like for example, there's a fixed rhyme and meters. So if you're going to compose a poetry of this, it has to resonate like this, with rhymes and meters.
Yeah.
The Quran has its own rhyme and own meters. It's unlike any of them. So this is the Quranic challenge, bring something like it. Not any of the 16s, but like the Quran.
Yeah.
So the open challenge to the people who don't believe, because Quran says if you don't believe in the Quran, if you are doubtful that this is a revelation sent to his slave Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, produce a chapter like it, seek your helpers and supporters besides God. If you are truthful in your claim, if you're truthful in your doubt. So the Quran doesn't simply say, look, do it yourself, like Mary, you might not know Arabic. It puts you into some kind of, what's this word, like this, incapacity because you're not able to do it. But the Quran doesn't stop you there from being just and says, look, no problem. Go and seek help and support from the people who can, people who know Arabic language. Okay, so that is the linguistic imitability challenge of the Quran, to falsify it, to falsify the Quran.
Yeah.
Because if you are able to falsify it, bring something like it, then this is a human invention, because you can make something like it. But if you cannot, then that this is something that you have to now think about it. How is it impossible for me to imitate?
Yeah.
To give you an analogy from you see these constructions over there. This is how they're constructing the mold. They had this mold there, like look like a mountain or a hill. Behind that is a building. Can you see that building?
Yes.
It's made of bricks. Did you know that? Stones and bricks connected to each other. Now, suppose I came and said, look, I am also an engineer, an architect, and I challenge you to make something like mine.
Yeah.
And you go and look at my particular building, and you see every single brick or stone is floating in space, free from each other. Not connected, free from each other, like this. You, as an engineer and architect, can you make something like it? Can you get any friends, any professors who teach you architecture and construction and so on and so forth? No one will be able to, because it will not be within our capacity to make something like it. The Quran, if you think about it, the way it's constructed, it's like this. It's using the same Arabic alphabets. It is putting them into, particles and words and phrases and sentences and passages, and yet it is not something that people can imitate it.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So that is what the Quran is doing to falsify the book.
When I've finished it, I'll be happy to come and ask more questions.
Of course. So this is what you should take this and say, like, okay, now let me see, why is it that it's not imitable? There are a lot of attempts on the internet. People haven't stopped them from doing it, but have they looked at what is the objective challenge of the Quran? It's nothing to do with beauty. People often say, oh, how are we going to judge? Well, produce something like it and then get your own. We don't mind if you bring a neutral party and judge and see whether they can do it. For example, if I when I say, did I say when I says? I didn't say now I says, right? But you know, in English language, I mean, there is a grammatical acceptable form not in the everyday language in the street or in our communities. I can use an acceptable language, but when I'm going to write